Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guests introduce themselves to our listeners and viewers at home. And we're going to start with Miss Jana S Brown, the many voices and personalities thereof.
Hi guys, I'm Jana S Brown. I write under the pen name Jena Rey for science fiction, fantasy, urban fantasy, and things that go thud, zoom, and arg. And I'm surrounded by all these wonderful gentlemen, so this is going to be fun.
Outstanding. It's like the middle of the Brady Bunch square.
Exactly. Gentlemen, we use that term loosely here.
It's you can be
next, we have Mr. Jesse James Fain, outlaw author himself.
Hey, everybody. Like JR says, I am Jesse James Fain, the outlaw author. I write pretty much everything science fiction, mil sci-fi, fantasy, dark fantasy, urban fantasy, anything I can squeeze a gunfight, a fist fight, or a sword fight into. I spent a really long time in the dojo and the MMA gym, spent a really long time in the gun range, and so I try and bring that into my writing.
All right, dojos and guns, the perfect combination for a good time. All righty. Nick is avoiding the low-hanging fruit I just laid out there for him because he's showing restraint. Next.
I'm grown as a person. I'm maturing.
Next, we have JT, whose name I cannot pronounce the last name. And I can blame this on being hard of hearing because you've pronounced it for me like a dozen times, and I still get it wrong.
Hey, everybody. I'm JT Arralle. All right. Science fiction, fantasy, horror, and pretty much anything that comes to mind.
Nice. So one of the things I think I'm going to do is I'm going to get the people whose name I can't pronounce, and on the frequent visitor sheet, which you're on, JT, I'm just going to write it phonetically next to it so I get this right in the future. Maybe it'll work. Maybe not. We'll see if I can be trained.
Or you can just
I'm not sure if I'm a good enough monkey.
That works. I like that one.
What's that? Railgun?
A railgun.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I might remember that. No guarantees, Swiss cheese memory and all that. But next we have Mr. Matthew Bowman.
Hi there. I am Matthew Bowman. I am a science fiction fantasy freelance editor, and I've been one for almost 15 years now, come next January. So by the time that this airs, it'll be very close. Lately I've been writing some free space opera that is a little heavier on the sci-fi, a little heavier on the hard science than usual, and the readers seem to like that. So I've been trying to science it up a bit. And part of that has actually been on space colonization. So this is why I am here.
Always a good thing. And next we have everyone's favorite Canadian, Mr. Captain Canuck, Nathan Pedde.
Hey, up here from wintry north. We were talking about how cold it was before, and I just laugh at you all. I write
winter is coming.
Winter is coming.
I live in Texas. Winter's just sort of passing me by.
I miss my beloved state of Texas.
I write sci-fi, fantasy, space westerns. I love sci-fi crime thrillers as well. What I've been working on is my futurism wet dream of a sci-fi world that I call Beyond Terra Continuum, and it's my theory on what things would be like 500 years in the future. And space colonization is right up in that alley, so which is why I'm here.
You know, the only way space colonization works for Canada is if they can terraform, because I've got it on good authority. Canadians will not leave the motherland if they can't take maple syrup with them. So,
damn right.
We're going to have to. Yeah. But the good news is Stargate did teach us that most alien planets actually look like Canada. So, I mean, you have a chance.
Pretty much.
Wait, is that part of Canada the one where the maple trees grow? I don't know if you're in luck yet.
That's Quebec.
Yeah, I don't know where the maple
trees in Quebec.
That is true.
Oh, all right. Jokes aside. All right. Since we do this every time, we get to tell how we all first met. And we actually all met on the shuttle ride over to Alpha Centauri. They told us there was no coffee, so we made them turn it around, and we came home, and now we're doing a podcast. True story. All right. Next, the religion question. Are you guys all ready for this, ladies and gentlemen? All right.
Yes.
So, The Martian, Elysium, or Red Planet? Nathan.
That would be The Martian.
Excellent choice.
The reason is nothing to do with the colonization. It's literally just the Matt Damon character.
Sign the shit out of it.
That's it. It's sold right there. I gotta pick that over all the others.
Every time someone says Matt Damon, I just think of Team America.
Oh yeah, Matt
Matt
Damon.
Damon.
All right, Jesse. So is it going to be The Martian, Elysium, or Red Planet?
As much as I like making fun of Matt Damon, I gotta go with Elysium. I am very partial to images of the future that are still very physical in a human way. And that's a big part of Elysium's story is the cool exoskeletons and the being able to treat people that have untreatable illnesses. And I like that version of sci-fi that it's still grounded in flesh and bone. So gotta go with Elysium.
All right. What about you, Jana?
I have to go with The Martian, and it all comes down to potato farming. Because I did that at my grandparents' farm for so many years that watching him fuss over the sprouts and what's going to happen and everything else, it's like, yep, that's my man. So, yep, it's the Martian thing.
Okay. All right. What about you, JT?
So Elysium is a close second to The Martian. I really like the action in Elysium. It's a great story, but The Martian, it just has that realism to it.
Okay. And Matt, what about you?
I would say going with all of this, especially since I'm the only one on this level, so I'll do the answer that no one else has done. I'll say Red Planet. But that's for two particular reasons that actually have very little to do with the plot. One is Val Kilmer.
Okay.
Val Kilmer is awesome, and the other one, the main character is Commander Kate Bowman, and I have to be partial to characters that share my name, because when I was growing up, there was only one family of Bowmans around, and it was an unusual sort of thing for me.
Nice. All right. What about you, Nick?
As much as I love The Martian, it's one of my favorite lines comes from that movie. It's also, I got a T-shirt that has that line on. It says we're gonna have to science the shit out of this. I go with the other Matt Damon movie, Elysium. I like the action. I like the story. I like that it was like I think Jesse said, it's very grounded in humanism, even though it's in the future. I don't know. I really enjoy that movie. But like all three of those movies are great. It's hard. It's like picking your favorite candy or soda pop. Like it's hard. So I'm gonna go with Elysium.
For me, it's Elysium too, just because I like the action scenes. I thought they were really good.
The exoskeleton was really cool too. That he had.
Yeah, I didn't. I've seen The Martian in the movie, but for me, I read the book first. So when I was doing my first contract for audiobook, Podium reached out, and one of the proof that we can do good stuff with like the military and sci-fi kind of themes was that they recorded The Martian. So they sent me that audiobook. Although it was still on CD, so this is telling you how long ago that was. They sent me the CD pack of The Martian that Bray. What's his first name? Anyway, what's that?
R.C. Bray.
Yeah, R.C. Bray. There we go. R.C. Bray narrated. I ended up never opening it because it was CD, so I just bought it on Amazon Audible, and I raffled that out years later when they re-recorded it with Wesley Crusher. But yeah, it's the Elysium for me because the combat scenes were kind of fun to watch. All right, and because we are polytheistic here at the Blasters and Blades podcast, Forbidden Planet, War of the Worlds, or Ad Astra. Nathan.
I'll have to confess, I haven't seen Ad Astra or Forbidden Planet, so I'll have to pick War of the Worlds just because it's the only one I've seen. I didn't even know it existed until about 5 minutes ago.
Which version of War?
We reviewed. It was one of the OGs of sci-fi movies. Definitely recommend it. It has Robbie the robot, and it has the perfect engineer who, like, the first thing he does when he gets a robot that can manufacture things, he wants 62,000 gallons of booze.
Nice. I've
That is
seen
a man after my own heart.
I've seen the Tom Cruise movie, and I've also listened to the radio play, or at least a version of it, of World World.
Nice. I have watched the movie. I didn't watch the radio play. All right. Next, we have Jesse.
I'm going to go with War of the Worlds as well. I have seen all three. I enjoy all three for different reasons. But I love sci-fi, and hard sci-fi can be really great. But for me, sci-fi is about not actually explaining everything. And I think that using fantastical story elements in basically a futuristic manner is really important in sci-fi. And I love that War of the Worlds has this just like twist to it that's very, scientific and makes perfect sense, but that it doesn't go so super heavy.
Okay. All right, Jana.
All right, I'm gonna make it 3 because War of the World is my favorite. But I'm with Nathan where was it Nathan? No, whoever it was that had first seen it in the radio play. That was my first exposure to it, was the radio play with my grandfather. And that was a lot of fun. And then I read it, and I haven't seen the Tom Cruise version. I've only seen the much older version. But I loved that as the way that reached out, those old 1938 recordings. There was something just so beautiful there. I mean, that's your first early audiobooks were those radio dramas. And despite all of the really terrible special effects in comparison, it just took us away, and we spent a whole lot of time out with the aliens. It was just lovely. So that's my favorite. Nostalgia factor.
Excellent choice. All right, JT.
All right, so I'm going to go with War of the Worlds, but my favorite aspect about that was the public panic.
I have trouble believing, I get that it happened, but I don't understand how they thought that was real.
I don't either, because there were multiple announcements during the process of the entire performance that warned them that it was fake. But you also have to look at some of the other countries where they played it later, and even they freaked out.
Well, it's so well written. It
was.
Really does hit you at that level that you go, this could be happening. And that's, I think that's the thing. It overcomes your common sense, because it is so well written that you just go, I'm part of the story now. And it's really hard to say, no, this isn't real.
It also showcased their creativity for the sound effects to make it sound real. And
it is in public domain, so there are several authors that have started writing the unofficial sequels to War of the Worlds.
Yes.
And we've interviewed one of them. It sounds like an interesting concept, some of what people are doing with it. Since it is public domain, the original audio in written production, obviously not the readaptations, those are still covered. Those versions of it that became I think it was Tom Cruise in the movie. Those are still protected, those versions of it. But the original, free reign. So,
yep.
All right, what about you, Matt?
Well, it's very tempting to go with War of the Worlds because of its cultural impact in there. But I'm not going to, but I also want to say that I've listened to the original version of all that. And I can tell you that the reason why it felt so real is that there is a good stretch in the beginning where you don't have those announcements. And the way that the news broadcaster is breaking in is exactly how breaking news was done.
Yep.
Which is part of the immersion. So if you haven't listened to those original recordings, it's hard to get that. But I have for original recordings of how they do breaking news. And at the time, with all the stuff that was going on in Europe, that sort of panic in there was really something that you could beat out. But
the public was primed for it.
For my choice in all of this, I'm going to go with Forbidden Planet because it's another cultural milestone in there. I mean, even if only for the music, because the only reason that movie did not get an award from the Academy for best music is that they didn't use any traditional instruments. They weren't even allowed to say that there was a music soundtrack Instead, it's credited as electric tonalities. So your first completely computer-generated soundtrack, and it is eerie and fits very well with the movie. And on top of that, you have all sorts of that classic golden age of sci-fi, the idea that the most alien creature out there is humanity itself.
Okay. All right. What about you, Nick?
I'm going to go with Forbidden Planet. I mean, all of those movies are great, but I really like Forbidden Planet. I love the story. I love the special effects. Just one of those movies I enjoy, and I've watched it many times outside of reviewing it for the show, because I thought it was great, and they got cheated a lot that year from the Academy. It should have got best special effects. There was things that were going on in there. I was like, how the hell did they do that at that time?
There was also some scandal with the costume the young lady wore. Was considered like basic streetwear today, but would have been shocking back then for her alien.
It's not scandalous to me. I thought it was awesome. She was hot.
I will have to give a correction because my wife is correcting me from the other room.
They do that.
As one does.
Instruments. They didn't go through the Hollywood Musicians Union, so the music wasn't music. That's the text message you just sent me.
Oh, so lame.
Oh,
Yeah, it wasn't union.
Yeah,
I believe that. So for me, I'm going to go with Forbidden Planet because, I mean, we've watched it for the show, but I really did love Robbie the Robot, and I really did love the
he made 60 gallons of bourbon, dude. Like, he's
right?
the coolest robot ever.
That is the most army thing I can think of, where the guy's like, what are we going to do with this robot that can do anything? We're making booze.
Make bourbon.
And it didn't give it to him in gallon. It made it by like the liter container, I think it was, or the really
but it was
small
still
one.
60 gallons worth. It was like tons
It was
of
60
bottles.
gallons worth. And then, of course, he's trying to sneak that in the middle of this fight with aliens. And his CO's like, what the hell, right? You're supposed to be sobering up. And he's like, oh, honest, it's for the engine.
Yeah, change your plans. That's not happening.
So, and that was the other shame is when the planet went belly up, like they did not save all that booze. I mean, that's almost a war crime.
It hurts the liver and the heart.
In the heart. All right.
But to be fair, it was their first time blowing up a planet, and it's not a war crime the first time.
This is true.
Never is a war crime the first time. Somebody listens
Spoken
to
like
that
a true
electrician.
Canadian.
The Flat Electrician is the America's favorite history teaser.
Oh, God.
Pretty
I love
much.
that, dude. We got to
It's
get
all
on
right.
the show, man.
I'm trying to find an angle because we got to keep it spec fic focused, and yeah, if I could find an angle, that is on my dream list for a guest.
Bring him in to react for sci-fi stories, for
Do
real
a Veterans
sci-fi
Day
stories.
episode and bring them
Oh
on.
yeah,
military
there we go.
Military sci-fi.
Yeah.
There we go. I'm going to reach out now. You gave me the angle. All right. And finally, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Interstellar, or Space 1999. And before we go on, since everyone confessed the ones they haven't seen, I actually haven't seen Ad Astra, which is why I picked Forbidden Planet. But I will fix that, people. Maybe we'll add that into one of our reviews, season 5. But so
now we have to admit which ones we haven't seen.
I mean, you don't have to, but they say confession is good for the soul or something.
Okay. So
Tell me.
the first choice of The Martian, Elysium, and Red Planet, I haven't seen any of those three. The reason why I picked Red Planet, I literally was looking it up on Wikipedia. It's like, okay, I have to put something in here.
This man writes.
All right, so 2001: Space Odyssey, Interstellar, or Space 1999. Nathan,
Interstellar all the way.
why?
It's the emotion with it. Yes, the science is decent for a Hollywood production, but it's the emotion of this guy's journey, and at the end of it, he doesn't get what he wanted. He wanted to go back to his kid, and he doesn't get it. And he has to live with that. And that journey brings it, just completes the story, and it's just amazing.
Okay. What about you, Jesse?
I'm going to go with Interstellar as well. Totally different reason. I know everybody calls it a classic, but 2001: A Space Odyssey to me is not entertaining. I get
What?
drastically bored. I don't know what part of it's wasted
Kubrick,
on me,
so
but it's wasted on me, and I just like
The
I will
movie
fall
is
asleep.
extremely slow paced.
Yep.
it is.
Yeah.
It's a classic
Yep.
Kubrick film. So, like, it's
You-
very story driven, and it's a slow burn. I'll agree with you on
And he
that,
was
Jesse.
also a perfectionist. He had to film on location.
Yeah, had to go into outer space. Had to get an AI computer.
Yeah,
What an asshole.
I'm good with slow burns. I'm not good with, hey, where did I leave my matches? Like,
It was also done in 1968, and their film production standards and story standards were a lot different. Nowadays, on a movie, you've got to get to the point in 9 minutes.
Mhm.
Back in
Yeah,
1968, it was about 17.
yeah, I don't suffer from the modern low attention span. I promise. It's just it's just too much.
It's not even that it was a low attention span kind of thing. It's really not. You have to remember what else was going on in 1968. Everybody was gaga about going to space because we're coming up on the moon landing.
Yeah.
And so people were watching it for the idea of going through space like that. And what was being portrayed in there was a very futuristic but realistic future.
It was very grounded.
Thing that everyone felt like they were heading toward really fast. That it could really be like this by the time that we get to 2001.
All I know is the Jetsons promised me we would have the robot maids by now, and I still do not have a Rosie.
Yeah.
I do. I have a Roomba whose name is Rosie.
But did you put a Zumba on your Roomba? That is the question. All right.
I put a Rosie sticker on my Roomba because she's Rosie,
Nice.
according to the app, and I can control her, and she's sassy like Rosie is.
Okay.
And then did the
All right.
Macarena.
Jana. 2001: A Space Odyssey, Interstellar, or Space 1999?
Despite the slowness, I do like 2001. Out of those, the best. I like the looking at. It's a lot of what science fiction has always done with that whole. Does the computer decide that its primary objective is to get rid of you because that's the only way that it can reach its primary objective? And Asimov was doing that, and so many of those other things. So again, it's that question of when we let the computers take a lot of control, are we putting ourselves in danger? And I like that. And the whole "I can't do that, Hal" is very quotable. It's one of those things that came up a whole lot in my childhood was, go do this. I can't do that, Hal.
I'm
Some
sorry.
I can't do that, Dave.
Can't
Excuse
do-
me. I've confused my names. I can't do that, Dave. It's like,
There are some movies that are so quotable that they get into the popular zeitgeist, even by people who've never even heard of the movie.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard people
that's
say,
one
I
of
love the smell of napalm in the morning, and they don't realize what movie they're quoting. So like, it's just, I think that's one of those movies that kind of got in the cultural zeitgeist, even for people who haven't seen the movie or even know what it's about.
Yeah.
So, all right. What about you, JT?
So, while I enjoyed 2001 and its sequel, 2010, I think I'm going to go with Space 1999 because I really, really love campy sci-fi movies. And while this one was trying to be somewhat serious, I mean, the special effects that they were working with were so low tech, it's hilarious. Just especially watching it nowadays.
Okay. Matt?
Well, as I telegraphed before, I'm going to go with 2001 because I'll once again point out the main character is named Bowman. And actually, and another little thing in there, my now father-in-law used to call me Dave because of that. And so he would tell me, I can't do that, Dave. Yeah.
nice.
Nice.
Yeah, he doesn't do that to his daughter, though, now that she's a Bowman as well. But regardless,
Talk about a missed opportunity.
There is, as I said, it is a cultural icon in there, and if you watch it with the idea in there of what the audience was like at that particular time, what was in the news, if you're in any way interested in rockets, how everything seems to be hurtling toward this this kind of future, that movie would feel like a window into inevitability. Not the alien artifact or anything like that, but the computer, the spaceship, the space station, the moon base, all of that feels very real to that late 1960s mindset. And then by the time that you're in the 70s, it's just poof. That time is gone. So if you ever want to really feel what it was like for an audience in the space race, and you keep that sort of inevitability in mind, you watch that movie and you can feel what it's like for that kind of excitement, because that movie is extremely slow paced. But if you're immersed in that, what was then current events, then it doesn't feel slow paced. It feels like you're savoring what's just around the corner.
Okay. What about you, Nick?
Oh man, I do love 2001: Space Odyssey. It's got a lot of good stuff going on in there. I consider it almost kind of like elevated horror with Hal. But that's a conversation for another time because it's not meant to be that. But I do love Interstellar. If I had to choose, gun to the head, I'm going to choose Interstellar on this one. I think it's a riveting story. I like how it does some really hard science stuff going on in there. It's one of those movies that you definitely have to be in the mood to watch. Otherwise, you're just going to be like, holy hell, I'm lost. So it's a great movie. I think it's great, and I think it was well acted. I like the planet where it's like every hour was like 70 years on Earth and shit. So like there was a lot of stuff going on in there that I really enjoyed. I thought it was a very enjoyable movie.
Yeah, not a lot of science fiction takes into effect the concept of time distortion when you're like leaving the planetary surface, and that's it. It gets really confusing to try to factor all that in. And it makes plot continuity an issue because realistically, if you did that, what you're going to end up is you're going to have the class of culture on the various planets, and then the ships are going to have their own, which is going to be a hodgepodge of whatever era the people join the ship on, because they're never going to link up. It's going to be weird, and so I do like that they factor that in. But for me, I'm going to have to go to Space 1999 just because one of the first models I built as a kid was the ship. And it was very, as far as models go, it's pretty easy to put together. So I really dig it. It has a really huge cult following. It's hard for me to judge as far as the campiness, what it would have been considered then, because some of the stuff that we would call campy now, it didn't age as well. Not that it would have been campy then. So I don't know enough about like the history of the film to know how it would have rated at the time, but I did enjoy it. So. All right. Last but certainly not least, since this is the Blasters and Blades, and we are affiliate sponsors with the coffee brand Coffee, Podcast Grunts get you 10% off. Link is in the show notes. But normally we would ask you if you drink coffee or tea and how do you take it, but you've all answered that dozens of times with dozens of variations. So this is the more important question. You land on an alien planet as a colonist. Are you drinking alien coffee? Are you going to try the local brew? Nathan?
Is there caffeine in it?
Absolutely.
Black like my soul, please.
All right. What about you, Jesse?
Am I going to try it? Yes. Am I going to try it first? No. No, I'm not.
I'll do it first.
In the military, just don't pick up the holy hand grenade and you're going to be okay. All right, Jana, would you be willing to at least try it just for grins and giggles?
Probably, especially along the tea line, because I do like green teas and herbal teas, And so there's a lot of possibilities out there that might go really well with, my lemon ginger tea in the morning. So
Okay.
I'll give it a shot.
All right, JT.
I would definitely try it, but first I'm going to look in it for anything moving on its own accord.
All right, Matt.
Are we using space opera rules or hard science rules?
Whichever one makes your day better.
Dealer's choice, Matt.
Okay, so space opera rules, sure. If we're going by hard science rules, no, I do not want the alien bacteria in my gut because they will feed on a whole bunch of stuff. No, thank you.
Well, that's why you let somebody else drink it first, just to make sure it's safe.
But you see, that's not actually in the scenario. I mean, apparently Jesse has someone coming along with him, but I don't know who's with me. And I don't actually care about them.
Just be worried if you're with Jesse.
Hey, I'm not forcing it on anybody. I'm just not drinking it first.
I'll just switch
If I try it with Jesse, I'll drink it first.
Well, I can just see it now. Jesse's pulling the old Sicilian trick where he's moving the cups around, Princess Bride style. I can just see it now.
Only a fool would take the alien coffee in front of him.
Never make a wager of death when death's on the line.
All right, Nick. So we know you're going to drink it, so I'm going to mix it up for you. How much bourbon are you going to put in the alien coffee the first time?
I'm going to give it a sip first, pre-bourbon. Yes. And if I think bourbon is going to elevate the flavor palette, then I'll add bourbon to it.
Which is yes.
I've been, yeah, I'm probably going to put bourbon in it. I mean,
So
everybody knows, the audience knows, Nick's going to put bourbon in it. Nick had bourbon in his coffee this morning from Coffee Brand Coffee. It was amazing.
So does that make you a coffee snob or a bourbon snob?
Or a coffee bourbon? Bourbon coffee? I don't know.
Bourbon.
Voices overlapped. So it said it at the exact same time. I don't know who said which, but it made sense either way.
Yes, I would definitely try it, although I'm with Jesse. I'm going to let some other sucker do it first, or at least run it through the science lab, right? But I'm definitely game. I know one of the cool things I saw a couple years ago, there was a company that would actually take their beans and they would roast them. Like somehow they sent them into space, and then when it came back down and it was supposed to affect the flavor, it certainly affected the price, but they were calling it space coffee.
Nice.
I will find the link in the article where they talked about it, but basically shooting it into space was part of the roasting process, and then they brought it back and consumed it. So anyway, all right. So now we are going to shamelessly show for the man, and then we're going to talk about space colonization, the topic that brought us here.
They came in peace, or so the aliens said. Here are 18 examples of their lies. Venture into the unknown with us. Who is out there? What will they want from us? Join us in the adventure of First Contact. Each story explores a different facet of aliens meeting humanity. Buy Contact This, a First Contact anthology, and read some of the industry's best storytellers today.
All right. Thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude. And yes, I have found the space coffee. I will link to it, but they $26 for an ounce. So that is not in my budget.
Is that space beans?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I found on a search for space coffee.
Yeah, I'm not that interested in it. It doesn't specify why they call it space. I know shooting into space was part of it. I'll do some more research and put it in the show notes, dear listener, for you to pursue later. But with that, all right, so space colonization. Why do we think that the concept of, well, let's specify space colonization implies you're going somewhere to inhabit a place, right? Not just being in space, but actually going to other places to inhabit. What is it about that concept, going and colonizing the stars, that you think appeals to readers so universally that it is one of the oldest science fiction tropes and still is popular? All right, Nick, you raised your hand. Good boy.
Yeah. Gold stars for Nick. I think it's part of the human condition. We're explorers by nature. So space exploration and colonization is definitely something inside our wheelhouse. To know what's out there, to learn more. Most humans that I interact with are kind of dumb. But I'd say the majority of us have that exploration spirit, that Lewis and Clark spirit, to find out what's out there and to gather knowledge. I mean, that's where you get Star Trek from. It's that completely embodies the human spirit of knowing what's out there and getting to know what is beyond our reach, what's out there in the stars. So I just think it's something that's ingrained in our DNA.
And in point of fact, Star Trek was originally pitched as a space western. The line that Roddenberry used pitched to the studio was "Wagon Train to the Stars." Wagon Train was the most popular western at the time, and
I've watched it. Thanks, Grandpa. Thanks, Dad.
So they're inherently tapping into that, especially with that tagline, "Space, the Final Frontier."
Mm-hmm.
It's a very American concept in there, and a lot of science fiction is fueled by the American audience. And some of the earliest sci-fi was trending into space western stuff. In fact, one of the earliest examples of sci-fi in the 20th century was John Carter, Princess of Mars, and that one explicitly starts out as a western, and he goes into a cave and suddenly he's on another world and he's exploring that world, and that still feels like a western. It is that exploration, trying to find something that's new around the next corner, being somewhere that no one else has been, but then also improving it. Because, there's the fun of being somewhere that no one else has ever been before, of seeing things that no one else or few else have seen. But then there's, improving it, making it better in some kind of way, making it yours, making it good for others, bringing other people there. Making it survivable by the sweat of your brow and the blood pouring from your fingertips.
I think one of the things that we lost when we got modernity is that for a while, go west, young man, and seek your fortune was something we told people, and it was sort of the escape valve for the malcontents and the people that just didn't quite fit in. Once we once you colonize the whole planet and there are no great mysteries left, space is now that escape valve for people that, basically for whatever reason they don't agree with society or whatever, and they can't take their ball and go home anymore. Now space is that, they could take their ball and leave. And so if they're not happy here, rather than to cause hate and discontent, conflict, whatever, there is that other place they can go. And I think sort of space exploration fuels that desire. The same thing that drove our ancestors from Europe to America, or I guess Canada is technically in the Americas, or any of the other places that explorers sort of went. It's that last great frontier, to quote Star Trek.
Well, tying directly in with the thirst for that knowledge is also these explorers. It takes a certain personality, and a lot of it is ego. They want to be the first out there. They want to put their stamp on it. They want to get known for having discovered X, Y, or Z.
Well, and
we also go for resources, though. Oh, go, Jesse.
Well, I was going to say on top, but and I agree on the ego thing 100%. But on top of that, Nick mentioned the human condition, and the human condition is that we understand the passage of time and how probability and chance work, and we also understand that at some point in our past, a giant rock slammed into this planet and caused devastation. So it is part of the human condition that you always bring a spare. Like, all my military vets are going to know 1 is none, 2 is 1. We don't have a spare planet. And so eventually either humanity finds a way off this rock and we find somewhere else to live to have a backup home, or this home gets deleted by the end of our star, or a giant meteor, or any of them. Like, if gravity goes wrong for any reason, or our solar system gets out of whack for any reason, we're done. We're cooked. That's it.
Yeah. And we also tend to go for resources. I mean, that was a lot of what drove us to the West. We were looking for beaver skins. We were looking for all these other things that feed society. We're going out there for that kind of thing. They've already done a lot of the numbers on, gosh, the resources that are becoming more and more scarce here. It wouldn't be a huge jump to the asteroid field, and we would have as much of these raw earth metals and that kind of thing that make our technology work. There's a lot more of it in the asteroid belt than there is on this planet. And
Yes,
somebody's
ma'am.
going to go out there to get it, and someone's going to go capitalize on that and turn it into an industry. And there are elements and resources that we probably haven't even thought of that as we get out there, we would find use for, we would find value for. And so there's also that, yes, we go out because we like to explore, but we go out because we want to find stuff and bring it back and trade it with our friends. And then we go out either because we want to get away from people or we feel like people are driving us away. There's a reason why in both Starship Troopers and also in The Expanse and in several others, they have examples of like religious groups saying, yeah, we're out of here. We are tired of this stuff. We are going somewhere else. And they have the Nauvoo in The Expanse, and I can talk to this because I'm LDS. So I always laugh when they're like, yes, and the Mormons would jump on a spaceship and leave the rest of you bums behind. And like, that's not entirely wrong for some of the folks I know, where it's, there's a lot of people that have fled persecution of one sort or another, and they're running out of places on this planet to go. Not that I'm going because I like it here.
All that is good.
Was that Nathan?
Go ahead, Nathan.
I was going to say all that is all good. That leads to Lewis and Clark and explorers, but colonies are expensive to set up. If you look at back in the 1500s and 1600s, they didn't set up the colonies because of deep-seated human nature. They went out to look for colonies because the Ottomans cut off their silk and spices. And then they started exploring and started looking for other places. And, they looked for, is Atlantic connected to the Indian Ocean? The answer is yes. And then they discovered there's a whole new world filled with all sorts of other goods. And then they wanted to capitalize on it. And they set up colonies because that was the best way to get those resources. It wasn't about some exploration that came 1700s 1800s with the US, but before that it was literally just, you have a shiny object and I don't want to fight France for it, so therefore I'm going to colonize in Africa and in Americas so I can have that shiny object without having to fight the French for that same object. And so they set up these huge trade empires, and that is why we have the normal colonizations. Going into space, there's going to be that same push for resources. There's going to be the same goods. It's going to be those rare earth minerals that we're going to be going after. All that stuff that China is currently just dominating. While there's an asteroid that has, $100 quadrillion worth of rare earth minerals?
Yeah, but that's only going to be valued at today's prices, which is the other thing. Once you flood the market with more of these, quote, rare things, they're not as rare anymore. The value isn't as there, so it's a diminishing return as well.
Oh, it is. Guaranteed.
Trade.
But then there's also, if you look at how much resources we use on items, just look at gold. Before it was just coins and jewelry. Now there's gold in everything. There's gold in your computer. There's gold in your cell phone. There's gold in your car. And
there's gold in my wife's diabetic test strips.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you're going to get, once you start getting these resources, the supply is going to go up, but then also the demand, they're going to find more uses for it because now it's going to be cheaper to use and there's going to be more people.
Let me offer a bit of a counterpoint to the idea of a flooded market in this, though, because one thing that is sometimes difficult to remember for people who are really used to hyper advanced space science fiction, Star Trek, Firefly, even. The thing is, it is not easy to get in and out of a gravity well. And so if you've got a whole bunch of stuff from an asteroid, that one asteroid is going to be worth a lot, but it's going to be worth more if it stays in space. The primary value of it is actually that you don't have to launch things up out of gravity well in order to build stuff in space. We are going to need a lot of space industry. We're going to need space stations, rotating habitats. We're going to need more ships. We're going to need a lot of stuff. And why are you launching that out of a gravity well in order to put stuff in space where you already have a couple extra mountains worth of mineable material? And then, on top of that, why would you want to haul that back to Earth, break it up in Earth orbit, and then very carefully bring it down? Yeah, there you can have a space elevator at some point, or possibly an orbital ring, but you wind up, that is going to be a way down the line, and so initially things are going to be on rockets, and so your goal is going to be to make it as cheap as possible and use the stuff in space already. And while the asteroid belt does not actually have as much as we have on Earth, there's because it's about equal to, I'm doing this completely off the top of my head. I do have this written down somewhere because I was calculating it for something, but I believe it's about 3/4 of the mass of Earth. Actually, no, it's less. It's much less. But regardless, it is some fraction of the mass of Earth. However, it's also blasted apart, and each one of those rocks is like a very large mountain's worth of stuff, and it's a lot easier to get through than it is to tunnel out all of the metals that are on Earth. Plus, we're kind of using that mass to stand on. So why Swiss cheese it?
Well,
And so you want the stuff that's in space. And I am also very much of the mind that this still applies to something like Mars. It is going to be much easier to colonize using rotating space habitats, because if you have approximately one mass of Earth, one Earth mass, you can. It'll take approximately 1 million, standard size O'Neill habitats to match the same dry land surface area of Earth, 1 million of them. But if you take one Earth mass of material and turn that into O'Neill cylinders, you can have 1 trillion O'Neill cylinders. And so you wind up with effectively 1 billion Earths if you are able to break apart a whole bunch of stuff like the asteroids. Someone's using Mercury currently, and can break that apart as well. You can have a lot of people out there, and that also satisfies that need that I believe it was Nathan that was mentioning it, that you want to have a spare. Or was it Jesse?
Jesse.
That you want to have a spare out there, and you can potentially have 1 million Earths just by breaking apart a few asteroids if you do it right.
It just going on with that idea of you got to get the resources in space. There's a couple space companies right now that are in existence that their plan is to mine water, because it's something like $12,000 a pound to get items into space. And so if they mine water in space and sell it to the ISS, they're $4,000 a pound. That's major. That no more shipping water up from Earth. And even that was just the start of the mining industry, just water. And every colony needs water.
That is part of something called in situ resource utilization. And it's the idea that you want to use as much of the pre-existing stuff at your landing site as possible. So, for example, there is a Texas company that is developing a robot that can 3D print a building on the moon. They have simulated lunar regolith that they're practicing with. The basics of this is they are making concrete without using water, because if you try to do that in a vacuum, it will boil away to nothing. But what they're doing is they're scooping up lunar regolith and literally melting it with a laser until it clings together like concrete. They are developing that because that is only a fraction of what the company does. They are working on doing that with regular stuff on. They've also said that developing this lunar robot is making it a lot easier to do the same thing on Earth. There are a lot of technologies that are like that, where you develop it better to go into the very limited range of things that you can do on the moon or somewhere else, like on Mars, and you can take that and make it better on Earth. There's another company that is working on being able to literally grow walls and such on the moon and then later on Mars using, I kid you not, mushrooms. They're making fungi walls, and they have a lot of proofs of concept on this. It takes them a few days to grow it, and then they have to cure it, and then all of a sudden you can make a literal toadstool that you can stand on and will support human weight, and it's made entirely of mushroom.
Interesting. Well, so we've talked about like the logistics of getting into space and the kind of resource gathering that will likely lead to colonization down the road. But one thing, that's the what, but we haven't considered the who. And so what kind of person do you think is going to be attracted to this, either taking up wholesale and moving to another planet and essentially going to a frontier living style, or to live in space and colonize these, lunar habitats colonizing, these habitats in orbit, so the floating space stations.
Yeah,
short South Africans that immigrate from other places.
Yeah.
I hope somebody got that joke.
Absolutely. It's a little elongated, but it's see
what you did there.
Yeah, but that is exactly who I was thinking of as well. I was look, Elon could have retired and gone onto a beach years ago. He didn't have to go into rockets, but
or Starlink.
But the thing is, he's doing exactly what he's always wanted to do. He wants rockets. He wants space. This is what he's doing with his billions. This is what he's having fun with. This is his retirement job. And people don't realize that. They think that he's in it for the money, and he's really just in it for the fun. And he's also in it for principles. He wants life to be multiplanetary and everything, but it's very important to remember that he's having fun. And the sort of people that are going to go into space are going to have that kind of attitude. They are not doing it because they have to. They're doing it because they want to, because they think that it's fun to strap themselves to a giant rocket and explode themselves into space.
As long as people are the extremely antisocial.
Yeah, as long as it's not a military rocket, because I don't want the one built by the lowest bidder.
Okay. You mentioned the antisocial ones. I will admit, the sysadmins who hate dealing with people, they're probably going to want to go commute into space just so that no one will bother them. But
every introvert.
I'm drawing a blank on the name of the book, but the guy that wrote the Wool book, Hugh Howey, I think, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
He wrote one about space colonization, and the idea was you basically sent the human growth materials, and then they grew humans in a vat. They lived the first couple of years in this automated generated vat on the planet. They trained them up in sort of virtual reality, so they had a whole life where they learned their various skills. And one of the things he talked about in that book where they were observing, and I'll try to find it, I've read it years ago, was that they were specifically picking people on the spectrum as able to handle the isolation of space. I don't know that I agree with his idea there, but There's definitely people thinking about the type of person that's going to take these jobs and what their social makeup might look like. So,
well, that's part of the interesting question, because if you're going to honestly deal with things like time dilation and that kind of thing, it's a one-way trip for most people. And I have grandchildren, and I don't necessarily want to take off and know that I will never see any of that progeny. But by the time that I could go places, do things, and come back, depending on how far you're going, once you start talking light years.
What if it was a lost in
out there.
space type situation where the whole family
Now, see,
goes?
that becomes the question, and that I think is where we get a lot of the idea of the colony ships, where it is we're not just taking us, but we are going to load up the entire family and go, so that you're not leaving that unit behind, because otherwise a lot of us who have those connections wouldn't make that choice. I've got a really good friend who she's a little older. She doesn't have any living family. She's just got, the friends and stuff. She has done all of the things: police officer, rode Harley motorcycles, played in men's hockey, and then now she's teaching Japanese kids how to speak English, because why not? All those things. And she is that explorer where she's like, oh yeah, if they want us to sign up to go to Mars, I'm there. I would totally do that, because I'm not leaving anybody behind. It would just be fun to be the first one out there. So
Yeah.
people like that are going to be some of those first, but eventually to really settle colonies, you either have to grow the people there, or you have to start thinking about how do we take families, because a lot of us are not going to leave the people we're connected to. We're going to want to take
I
them
would
with
do
us.
it if it was like a Battlestar type situation, where
Yeah,
like your whole
no
family
planet
goes
to-
and you're.
Well, in Earth it was. It's the everybody goes because there's nothing left to stay on.
Right.
And I'm gonna pull from another completely well, it's not completely unrelated, but in Halo we have the Spartan program, and for this brand new technology of how you you modify, genetically augment these soldiers and everything like that, you basically select them from when they're children, and I actually see that as a very realistic space colony setup. Now the ethical concerns of it, that's a whole nother debate. But if we really if we get to the point where it's like, okay, we're ready to do this, selecting children basically from a very young age or from birth that they're going to be trained and sent to do this, it makes a whole lot more sense, because I won't say any, but the vast majority of adults, one, haven't spent their entire lives preparing for all the different hats they're going to have to wear, and two, they're going to have attachments. So you build a specialty corps. You pull an agogi, you pull a child training, and you send kids that's their purpose.
Well, if we're talking about realistic, real science kind of colonization here, then any colonization that goes to another star is going to have to go the slow way, because as far as we can tell, there's no such thing as FDL. But it's great for sci-fi, but it does not seem to be anything in reality. And so you wind up having to look at the mentality of someone who will want to go on a generation arc ship, and they know that they are going to die before they get to their destination. So it's going to be their grandkids who are going to start that colony that they're dreaming of. And what is it that's going to motivate them? And that seems very complicated, but then there's actually a very simple explanation for it, which is if you are going to be living on that colony ship, if you want to have a new start, well, there is a definite new start where everyone's going to matter. Everyone's going to pull their weight. So if you don't want to just be another person, another faceless member of the crowd, then taking your family and going on that ship is actually more attractive sometimes than just moving to another city where you get lost in the crowd. On that ship, there are no excess people. There is no one not pulling their weight, because the whole point of getting people there is that you are supposed to be training up new generations. Everyone's supposed to be pulling their weight. And we talk about how the people that are, the later generations, what if they don't want to be there? Well, the thing is, there are a lot of people who are like that today. My kids eventually may not want to be in this town that they're born in. They may want to move, but if you're doing that space colonization, there isn't a whole lot of choice for them. Just like many centuries ago, there wasn't a whole lot of choice for other people born into small villages. So people will get on. People will grow up to the life that they're in. So that is one way to have that young core in there that are trained for this particular ability, for this job. And they are effectively going to a promised land. And it is just one that they will have to make themselves from literally the ground up, or I suppose from their direction, the sky down.
One of the topics when you start studying about space colonization and stuff is a colony viability. So I've read a couple numbers. Some say 50 people, some say 150 people. So if you think about it, if you're sending a generation ship and it needs to last 80 generations, that's 2,000 years. You only need 200 people. We have 8 billion. How hard would it be to find 200 people that would want to go? I'm sure you
Provided
can find.
nothing goes wrong. Because there's a lot of stories about what goes wrong.
Well, exactly. So if you're trying to get a colony ship that's going to be a generation ship that's going to go to Alpha Centauri and it's going to take 4 generations, how hard would it be to find 400 people to occupy that ship? I don't think it'd be that difficult considering there's 8 billion of us. You could find 400 good candidates that would want to go, that are healthy and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's one of the things that you see in a lot of science fiction that not everyone considers is how many different genetic strains you need to make a colony viable. I know why you don't see it on the episodic shows is because if they do that, like the budgets go up. So of course you got the tiny village outside the Stargate that has like 10 families. But in reality, I think I've seen anywhere between 500 to 5,000 unique DNA strands is what you would need to make that work. So that is something to consider. And then if you do colony ships that are going out, you almost need them to go out in groups because then they need to trade off for offspring marrying. Otherwise, you recreate on the ship the same genetic, depending on how long you're going out there. You streamline. Another one I've seen done, and I can't remember any specific book off the top of my head, where in addition to however many people they send, they take the biological matter to make babies. You can read between the lines of other people that didn't go on the mission as well, because you got to be able to fight that level of concern for inbreeding. And then, of course, there's the pie in the sky. Well, if we're sufficiently advanced, we can do all that. We could figure out how to get rid of the inbreeding problem, which is, a lot of assumptions on that one. So it's definitely something to consider is who you take and why. And you have to, you originally your first crew is going to be on your generation ship. You want skill sets, but that's not to say the generation that lands is going to have those. So if you don't have cryo freezing, your skill sets don't really matter as much as what you can train up for the people that are there when you land, wherever you land.
I think the movie Passengers really kind of dives into that.
Go on.
About having skill sets. Like, so you had people that they would wake up during the journey because it was not faster than light travel. So it was multi-general stuff. They cryo-froze most of the people that were going to go colonize stuff. So you'd wake up certain skill sets to run the ship. And if you've never seen it, give it a look. It's pretty good. It's got Chris Pratt in it. It's a good movie. So it really just kind of brings up those things like, while everyone's asleep, who's running the ship? Who do we wake up to run the ship? What if
Another thing. one other thing that I've seen in sci-fi that we can discuss as we bring this puppy home is one of the things you see is these colony ships are funded by companies that want to fund it because when they get to the other planet, they're going to take these resources and they're going to make money. But I think nobody really considers.
Weyland-Yutani? Are we talking about Weyland-Yutani?
No. I mean that is one. I'm just in general, but like you're going to end up when you get to that other planet, you're going to end up with the America problem. And at a certain point in time, they're going to want independence, and you're going to be so far away, unless you're talking instant portals. You're going to be so far away from the motherland, the mother company, that you're going to drift apart. And why am I paying taxes to this guy? Light years away. Screw you. We're on our own, and you end up with that. Basically the American Revolution in space all over again.
Yeah.
Because how do you maintain control that far away? And then you've got the pay for it, but the people that land didn't sign that contract with you. Their great-great-grandfather did. So
this is a question that comes up on a YouTube channel that is very good for all these questions about space colonization, especially within real physics. It's called Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur, who's another Army vet. So if you're wanting more Army vet commentary on there, you could probably reach out to him too.
We've actually had him on the show. He was in Iraq when I was. He was a cannon cocker, so don't hold it against him.
Yeah.
But he's a physicist by training, and so he resorted to that when he left the Army.
Yeah. Well, he has a whole bunch of videos on this, and we'll cover this topic multiple times. And he points out that for a very, very long time, Earth is going to be the center of human expansion, which also means that by sheer numbers, it's going to have the most development. So more people there to work on engineering and science and biology. So people are sending back resources the slow way, but they're doing that in exchange for information that is being transmitted out from Earth and from the solar system that will update the colony's systems to the latest technology, and also for maybe Earth to send out more technology, physical technology to them. This is all speculation, but that is one way to have an interstellar economy when things can't break the speed of light. It's difficult, but it's not impossible.
Well, and that matches what we see from colonial history. So a huge thing with our own American history is the colonies demanded raw resources, which would then be brought back to England and turned into refined goods, which triggers the whole issue with taxation. And I think that's why we see a lot of Gundam Wing style after colony rebellions. Somebody gets tired of Earth's rule, and we have these big dust ups, even though the logistics of that are really, really struggling. I think it has to do with the realities of that's what we see. That we see that happen again and again throughout history with colonies. Everything is now just really slower. And I think an interesting question is like we've talked about, hey, are we, how many people are we going to send and all that? But how many ships do you send? Do you really rely on one ship? Is that, and the amount of resources that one ship has?
Yeah, one of the things that Isaac will mention a lot on his show is the idea that you're not going to just be sending out one fleet. You will be sending out one ship. You send out a fleet of them, and so you wind up with interesting dynamics that he considers for how that fleet is run and what decisions the crews of each ship will make, including whether or not they want to stop someone at a planetoid that they pass in interstellar space in order to mine it out for resources, in order to boost the fleet some more, But that also means that that ship is going to be lagging a little bit behind because it had to stop. And so you wind up with some very interesting dynamics on that. When it comes to the fleet for just regular colonization purposes, does everyone stay at the destination, or do they maybe take half of their ships and continue on, build some more, birth some more people, and continue on in colonization waves?
So with these generation ships, you're also going to run into some other interesting issues. The crew, the people that are actually that have the skills to not only operate but also repair the systems are going to have to be trained over the years on this equipment. And there's equipment breaking down. There's things that you have to watch out for, interstellar objects causing damage. There's a lot of variables that go into this that you have to try to account for.
Robert Hyland had a book about that, where the generation that was, 5-6 generations, they had no idea what they were doing. They thought the world was the ship.
Yep.
Right. And they didn't understand that there were a generation ship that was going to another planet. And so they just kept on traveling through space, not knowing where they're going, not even having control over the ship.
So this
they
is
hadn't been the bridge.
For the world is hollow, and I have touched the sky.
There's a good look at that, although it's not technically colonization. The movie series was butchering the book series, The 100. And the idea is, we destroyed Earth, so we live in this space colony above Earth, waiting till the time to return to Earth. But one of the things you see is generations after this happened, so much has been lost. The technology is fading. The skill set of the people that were able to get them to this habitat in space aren't there anymore, and you've got diminishing returns. And I think, at least from that angle of a generational ship, that book series did a really good job of capturing what that looks like. Again, it was, it's a good book. I've read it. It's a good-ish TV show if you accept that it's nothing like the book. You just accept them as two separate properties with some names overlapping. But it did take a good look at what that looks like in a way that I think a lot of people don't consider. Because a lot of times you'll see the generation ships, they either pick up at the ship generation that's landing, or they pick up at the first generation, but not the middle. They kind of ignore that part because it's not as sexy to say, I drank my potato juice again today because life sucks, and, made another baby next day, whatever. And so it's one of those things that I think needs more consideration. Talk about this genre.
There was one book that I read. I'm blanking on the name of it now, but it actually does pick up in the middle of the voyage. They're coming to the end of their voyage, but in that first book, they haven't gotten to their target planet yet. And it is a story about what life is like in the middle of that voyage, except that in order to have something going and being interesting, it's actually a murder mystery. And so, someone killed someone on this colony ship, and now you have to figure out what happened and uncover the conspiracies and all that.
Yeah, and we really don't
cozy mystery in space.
Good.
I was gonna say, so it's a cozy mystery in space on the habitat.
I wouldn't say it's a cozy, but it felt more like they were going for hard boiled. So there's that. It didn't quite land at the end, and I did start the second book, but I never finished it. But I liked the concept of it, where you are solving a mystery, in this habitat. It was another O'Neill cylinder, except that they'd strapped a rocket to it to send it to another star system. So I enjoy the genre bending in there. I enjoy mixing mystery with sci-fi if you do it right.
Okay. Go ahead, Jason.
Oh, I was saying I really love how Galaxy's Edge handled this whole concept with the savages. And basically, they sent these generational ships out, and it took the generational ships thousands of years to get to the edge of the galaxy, and they're flying on shoestrings and bubblegum. But they figured out faster than light travel before the generational ships got to where they were going. So regular people from Earth show up first. And by the time the generational ships get there, they're all crazy, insane cyborgs or mutated in some way, or they have like huge theocracies based on a religion nobody else knows because they have no idea they were on a ship, and it makes for like hundreds of different unique what happens when you leave people alone in space for 1,000 years, and how does humanity change. And it made for a fantastic concept you could write on forever.
Right.
Didn't Pornell write a book similar to that?
Probably.
It's either Pornell or Heinlein. I remember reading one about that where that was the concept, is FTL was invented after they left. If you know the answer, dear listener, throw that in the comics.
There was a Heinlein juvenile that did that, where I cannot remember the name of it, but there was one like that, but that wasn't a centuries down the line meet up with the colony ship. It was more like his twin brother was on the slow ship to some other star, and the twin that stayed behind managed to find the lost experimental drive left behind by this crazed inventor. It was, I think, on Venus, and he managed to use that to catch up with them halfway through the voyage. So there was that. So it's possible that was the one that you're thinking of, just because that bit of scenario in there. But I haven't read every single Heinlein. Sorry. So there could be another one that I missed.
I think Jack L. Chalker addressed that in one of his series as well.
Okay.
Can't remember the name.
So obviously this is a topic that goes, the river is deep and wide, as they say. So we will definitely be visiting this topic again with more nuance, I think, narrow the focus of each individual episode. But since we only have an hour and we're already over, Nathan, what are you writing at the moment? Keep in mind, this is going to air mid-December. So future Nathan, what are you writing? And then how can listeners find you?
I am writing, it is a series of novellas. They're space westerns. Basically, I took John Wick, Cowboy Bebop, and merged them together. And I have these murder mysteries, and they're bounty hunters, and they're going around the solar system trying to find bounties. And that's what I'm working on right now. And you can find me at nathanpedde.com.
Okay. And then, Jesse, what is future you going to be writing?
Future me will be working on my Conan-esque character, Rune Red Eagle. He is a combination skinwalker and berserker, going through all kinds of fun short stories. And I'll also be working on the Holy Diver in the Midnight Sea, which is basically the sea at the center of everything, and the bar that sits next to it, where all the fixers recruit their divers to go find fantastical items and rare resources. And you can find me at outlawauthor.com. You can find me on Instagram under my full name, Jesse James Fain. Find me on Substack, again, Outlaw Author. And you can find me on Facebook if you really want to, though it is a personal page. So be expecting a lot more guns and tattoos than my writing, though I announce everything there too.
All right. So, Jana, what are your mini personalities going to be writing in future you? And then how can they find you?
Oh, that's always an interesting question. Hopefully by then, future me will have finished the urban fantasy that I'm currently writing and be working on number 3 for that. And then I have a science fiction romance that has jump gates and moving around between the stars that is begging for some attention. So hopefully I'll be able to loop back to that in December.
Okay. And JT Arralle, close? Better? No?
Close, better.
All right.
So future me will be writing after I finished the planning session on a urban fantasy kind of adventure mystery with a Lovecraftian twist.
You have me at Lovecraft every time.
And you can find me across most of the socials just under my name.
Outstanding. Matthew, what are you writing at the moment, and future you, obviously, and then how can listeners find you?
All right. Well, I am working on getting over the health issues that have plagued me and my family, and so that has put a delay in my writing. But I am writing a free space opera that we found on Royal Road. It is called The Best Defense. It is the story of what happens when present-day Earth is about to get conquered by one of two rival alien empires, and how Earth decides that the best defense is a good offense. And then in addition, I'm going to shamelessly plug my wife's book as well, Phoenix by Lori Janeski. As I mentioned, I enjoy the bending of mystery and sci-fi, and so she writes Space Cops. It is space noir, and is a very good series, and she has 2 books out. And I also have a short story set in her universe with a space cop that is mentioned in her book too. And that one can be found in What You Again from Raconteur Press. So that's it for now.
All right. And you can find us, dear listener. Oh, but first off, before we do that, Halfway Home is the book by Hugh Howey. I'll link that in the show notes. I recommend the audiobook. It's the one where they basically breed humans in vats on alien planets because it's cheaper to send it that way. Then they are basically being raised to various roles in the colony so they can send resources back. And then they're left to die. Of course, they don't know that. So that's a good one if you like it. I did Google it real quick. Heinlein Short Story Universe is the one where the FTL comes after and it beats them there. Although I'm sure other people have done it too. I got an article for you on the space coffee where they send the beans into space to roast them and then they bring them back. And then I linked to Isaac Arthur's Science and Futurisms, although we did interview him when we were Sci-Fi Shenanigans. So it is in my to-do list to bring that episode back for everybody. And we'll have to see about having him back on as well. Because for some of these topics, he's fun to talk to. And, you know, it's nice to see an Army boy made good. And then if you know anyone in your life who has a speech impediment, he does as well. And he takes his speech therapy to overcome it. And he still runs a successful empire on the YouTubes and the Twitters and all the things podcast land does. So it's I definitely made my son aware of it when he was younger doing speech therapy and how that's not cool and nobody else cool does it. So I was like, hey, check this guy out. I think he's pretty cool. And he goes to speech therapy. So, and with that, you can find us on our link tree at linktr.ee, linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast, where we link to all the things: the Bit Shoots, the Rumbles, the YouTubes, the TikTok, the Twitters. We have our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. We have our email at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. For professional purposes only, keep the shenanigans over to Madam Stabby Stab on the Instagram, Twitter, and the email. We promise she is alive. She's cooking food for Nick right now. And apparently his cooking privileges have been revoked. You burn one kitchen down one time and everyone gets their panties in a wad.
One time. It's like you never live it down. Now she's dyeing her hair. Like, I don't know what's going on.
So you can reach out to Stabby Stab there. We have our website where you can support the show. If you go to the link tree, click on the Spotify link there. It's a bunch of gobbledygook, trust me. But when you go there, you can listen to the episodes audio only or support the show for as little as 99 cents a month. You can help keep the lights on, or you can support the show more directly at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section this for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee until they float away on a river of Java, but not any Java, space Java. And this is the part I forgot, but I do need to remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews do help the right readers find the right books, and that matters. So I will remind you every time, book review, book review, book review. Do it for your future readers. And with that, Thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am JR Handley. This was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. All right, and with that, I'm going to hit the end button. Wait for it. Don't cuss yet.